This incredible story happens to young Amelia Berger, who lived with her husband Thomas on the edge of a forest in a small mountain village in Switzerland. Their house was the farthest from the village center, the last outpost of civilization before the endless sea of trees and snow-covered peaks. Amelia was in the final month of her pregnancy. It was their first child, long-awaited and hard-earned. She had previously lost 2 pregnancies in the early stages, and now the couple was afraid to even breathe, not wanting to scare away the happiness that had finally come knocking at their door. Thomas served in a special mountain unit in the army that rescued people in extreme situations. His job was dangerous but important. He helped those in trouble high in the mountains, where normal aid couldn't reach. His emergency bag was always ready to respond to orders at any time of day or night. Amelia remembered how they had met 5 years earlier. She had gotten lost during a hike in the mountains, and it was Thomas who found her, exhausted and terrified, after 2 days of searching. Since then, she had vowed never to underestimate the power of nature. But fate had other plans. That time was no different. The call came at 3 a.m. Thomas listened to his commander silently, nodding occasionally as if the other person could see him. A group of tourists had gotten trapped on a pass due to an avalanche, and they needed urgent help. Thomas was very worried about his wife. Their child was due in 2 weeks, but something told him that nature might have its own plans. "I'll call my parents," he said, packing his backpack in a hurry. "They'll come and stay with you while I'm gone." Thomas's parents lived in a neighboring village, 2 hours away by car. They were simple, kind people who loved Amelia like a daughter. But as soon as Thomas left, Amelia called them back and asked them not to come, reassuring them that she felt fine. "No need, Martha," she told her mother-in-law. "The forecast predicts a heavy snowstorm. I don't want you to risk it because of me. I still have 2 full weeks. Thomas will be back by then." In truth, Amelia just wanted to be alone. She loved her in-laws, but right now she needed time to gather her thoughts and prepare for the arrival of the baby. Besides, she felt a strange sense of anxiety that she didn't want to share with anyone. And the next day, just as the forecast predicted, a snowstorm began to rage, covering everything with a white blanket. The fierce wind uprooted several trees and also damaged the cell tower, leaving the entire village cut off from the outside world. By evening, Amelia suddenly felt her first contractions. At first, they were light, bearable. She even thought they were just Braxton Hicks contractions. But then, they grew stronger and more rhythmic. With horror, she realized that the baby had decided to come early. And now, when she was alone, while a storm raged outside, Amelia tried to stay calm. She had a backup plan. In a neighboring village, there was a medic, Mr. Jenkins, who could assist in emergency deliveries. He didn't live too far. By car, it would only take about 20 minutes to get to his house. If she left right away, she could make it before the birth truly began. Putting on warm clothes and taking a small bag with essentials, Amelia left the house. The wind immediately whipped her with its icy lash, throwing sharp snowflakes into her face. She headed to her car, a small 4-wheel drive Jeep, parked in the driveway. Starting the engine, she drove toward the village. But after barely a mile, the car stalled. The gas tank was empty. Amelia slammed her hands on the steering wheel, in despair. "Thomas meant to fill it up yesterday, but didn't have time," she whispered, feeling tears welling up. There was no choice. She got out of the car and began walking along the road, hoping to reach the medic's house without incident. But the blizzard made it impossible to see more than an arm's length ahead, and soon Amelia realized with dread that she was lost. Instead of following the road to the village, she had unknowingly turned onto a forest trail and now found herself surrounded by tall, unfriendly trees in the night's darkness. Panic began to rise from deep within, but Amelia forced herself to breathe steadily. Panic is the worst advisor in an emergency. Thomas always said that. She decided to find some kind of shelter and wait out the storm there, then try to find her way back at dawn. Despite the increasing contractions, Amelia trudged through the forest until she noticed a strange dark patch against the white snow. Getting closer, she saw it was the entrance to a small cave formed by fallen tree trunks and rocks. Squeezing inside with difficulty, she found that the cave was deep enough to shield her from the wind. It was dark and damp, but at least not as cold as outside. Amelia knew she needed to get warm and find a way to start a fire. In her bag, she had a lighter, a farewell gift from her father, who had died of lung cancer 3 years ago. He always told her, "Never leave home without a source of fire, sweetheart." Now that advice might save her life. She managed to gather some dry twigs from the back of the cave and lit a small fire. The flame was weak, but gave off a little warmth and light, which was already a great stroke of luck. Suddenly, the contractions grew more intense. Amelia realized that labor had truly begun, and all she could count on now was herself. She was going to give birth here, in this cave, all alone. "Not now, baby," she whispered, stroking her belly. "Just wait a little longer." But the child didn't want to wait. The contractions became stronger, and Amelia knew she had no choice. She had to prepare to give birth right here and now. She spread her coat on the ground and lay down, trying to remember everything she had learned about childbirth. Thomas had made her read piles of books and watch countless videos, in case the baby came early, far from. Their eyes met. Brown human eyes and the yellow eyes of a predator. It was a she-wolf, large with silvery gray fur, clearly the alpha of the pack. Amelia's heart nearly stopped from fear. Wolves rarely attack people, but she was wounded, helpless and bleeding, perfect prey. Behind the she-wolf, she saw several more pairs of glowing eyes. The whole pack was here. The she-wolf stepped forward, and Amelia desperately grabbed a burning branch from the fire, ready to defend herself. But instead of attacking, the she-wolf stopped and lowered her head, as if studying the human before her. Time seemed to stand still. Then something amazing happened. The she-wolf slowly approached and lay down beside Amelia, almost touching her trembling body with her warm flank. The rest of the wolves, following their experienced leader, entered the cave as well. They settled around Amelia, forming a living ring of warm bodies. Their presence strangely calmed her, and the fear slowly began to. The she-wolf looked at her, and Amelia felt as if she saw understanding in those yellow eyes, as if this wild creature somehow felt what she was going through. Another contraction made Amelia curl up in pain. The she-wolf suddenly rose and came closer, sniffing her belly. And then something happened that Amelia could neither foresee nor explain. The she-wolf began to lick her hands, as if trying to comfort and support her. The birth lasted all night. The firewood was running low, and Amelia feared that she and her baby might freeze to death. But the wolves, it seemed, understood her fear. Several of them left the cave and soon returned carrying small bundles of dry twigs in their jaws. They dropped them beside the dying fire. With great effort, Amelia added the branches to the embers, and the flames flared up again, filling the cave with warmth and light. As dawn approached, the contractions became almost constant. Amelia felt that the baby was about to be born. She braced herself for the final push when suddenly the ground beneath her trembled, and stones and snow began to fall from above. One of the large stones supporting the cave's ceiling started to shift. The earth beneath it, softened by the fire's heat, could no longer hold its weight. In another moment, the ceiling would collapse, burying Amelia and the wolves. The pack leader Amelia tried to get up, but a fresh wave of pain pinned her to the ground. The heavy stone finally broke loose and began to fall. At the last second, the she-wolf lunged forward and shoved Amelia toward the cave's exit. The rock crashed down where the woman had just been lying, filling the cave with dust and debris. Amelia found herself outside, lying in the snow, surrounded by the wolves. The storm had passed, and the sky was beginning to brighten. Dawn was near. But she had no time to admire the beauty of nature. Another contraction hit, and she felt the baby beginning to crown. The she-wolf lay down beside her again, and the rest of the pack formed a circle, as if shielding her from some invisible threat. And when the child was finally born, it was the she-wolf who approached first. Amelia watched in horror as the beast leaned over her baby, but the wolf merely bit through the umbilical cord with delicate precision and began to lick the newborn clean, just as she would with her own pup. With trembling hands, Amelia picked up the child, a tiny girl with a few strands of dark hair, and pressed her to her chest. The baby cried out, and it was the most beautiful sound Amelia had ever heard. At sunrise, Amelia sat leaning against a tree, her baby in her arms. The wolves were still near, guarding the new mother and her child. The she-wolf lay closest of all. Amelia cautiously reached out and rested her hand on the animal's head. The she-wolf didn't pull away. Instead, she pressed into the touch, like a domestic dog craving affection. Their eyes met once more, and Amelia could swear the wolf's gaze held a smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving us." Just then, the sound of an engine came from the forest's edge. The wolves tensed, but didn't flee. A moment later, an army jeep drove into the clearing, and a man in uniform jumped out. It was Thomas. When he saw his wife, surrounded by wolves, he froze in disbelief. His hand instinctively reached for the pistol at his side. "Thomas, no," Amelia shouted. "They saved us. They helped me give birth." Thomas slowly lowered his hand, still unable to comprehend what he was seeing. He stepped forward, and the wolves parted, allowing him to approach his wife and child. He knelt beside Amelia and looked at his newborn daughter with reverence. "She's beautiful," he whispered, then looked up at the she-wolf, who was still beside Amelia. "And you? You protected them?" The she-wolf remained still, calmly holding the man's gaze. Her eyes showed no fear or threat, only quiet confidence. Suddenly, another creature emerged from the forest, a massive hungry bear, likely awakened early from hibernation by the cave collapse. It rose on its hind legs, drawn by the scent of blood. Thomas reached for his pistol, but there was no time. The she-wolf launched herself at the bear in a flash, and the entire pack followed. A brutal fight broke out. Fur flew, growls and howls filled the air. The bear was powerful, but it stood no chance against the whole pack. Eventually, wounded and frightened, it retreated into the forest. But the victory came at a heavy cost. The she-wolf was gravely injured. Blood stained the snow around her bright red. Thomas gently handed Amelia and the baby to the paramedics who had arrived with his unit, then approached the wounded wolf. The other wolves watched him warily, but didn't attack, as if understanding that he meant no harm. Thomas took off his jacket and carefully wrapped the she-wolf in it. She didn't resist. Perhaps she was too weak, or maybe, somehow, she trusted him. "I know a great vet," he said to Amelia. "We can help her." As they left the clearing, Amelia and the baby in one ambulance, Thomas and the she-wolf in another. The rest of the pack stood at the edge of the forest, watching them go. Their eyes glowed in the morning light like tiny golden coins. A year passed. Amelia sat on the porch of their new home on the edge of town, watching her daughter, Luna, play on the lawn. Beside the child lay a silver-gray she-wolf, closely following the little girl's every move. After what happened in the forest, they couldn't return the she-wolf to the wild. Her injury had been too severe, and even after healing, she was left with a limp. Besides, the pack had moved deep into the mountains, and finding them was impossible. So the she-wolf stayed with them, not quite a wild animal anymore, but not a pet either. She never showed aggression toward people, and guarded little Luna as if she were her own pup. Sometimes, at night, she would disappear into the woods for a few days. But she always returned to the girl she had helped bring into the world on that terrible snowy night. At first, the locals didn't believe the story, but over time, the unusual bond between the woman, the child, and the wild animal became known far beyond their village, drawing curious visitors. Amelia often thought of that night and the strange connection that had formed between her and the wild creature. Two mothers, one human, the other animal, had found a common language without words, understanding each other on a level beyond human comprehension. Sometimes, when Luna was asleep and the she-wolf lay by her crib, Amelia would sit beside her and stroke her silvery fur. And she felt that in the wolf's golden eyes, she saw a wisdom and understanding that humans could never fully grasp. Maybe we're not so different from the wild beings that share this world, she thought. Within each of us lives an ancient instinct, as old as the earth itself, to protect our young at any cost. And it was this instinct that forged the unbreakable bond between a woman and a she-wolf on that cold winter night when little Luna was born. And sometimes, under the full moon, the she-wolf would walk into the yard, lift her head to the sky, and let out a long, mournful howl. And somewhere, far off in the forest, other wolves would answer, the pack that remembered their alpha and missed her. And Amelia knew that one day, when Luna was older and the wolf felt her mission was complete, she would return to her kind. But until then, she would remain close, guarding the little girl with dark hair and bright eyes, who had come into this world on a snowy night under the protection of a wolf pack.